everyone, good day. My name is Mary J. Ludreta and we are from Group 3 and we are here to tackle about the bar graph. But first, let's learn about the data representation. So the data representation is a method of representing information in terms of pictures, symbols, graphs, or numbers. So the information that we collect is called the data. So we can reach a certain conclusion by studying the data. There are different methods of the data representation, and one of them is the type of graph that we are going to tackle, which is the bar graph. So a bar graph is used to represent data visually using bars of different heights or length. Data is graphed either horizontally or vertically, allowing viewers to compare different values and draw conclusions quickly and easily. A typical bar graph will have a label, axes, scales, and bars, which represent measurable values such as amount or percentage. So these graphs are ideal for comparing any sort of numeric values including group sizes, inventories, and ratings, and survey responses. So incorporating data visualization into your projects is essential when working with number statistics. Regardless of what you're creating, having visuals to represent your data can greatly help your audience understand your point.
The objective to our report is to identify the part of the bar graph, interpret data presented in the bar graph using title, legend, and label, construct a bar graph, and appreciate the importance of the bar graph.
There are many graphs and bar charts that are used everywhere, and there are many forms of them. But do we really know who invented them and where they came from? Unusually, for such a simple and universally popular diagram, bar charts or bar graphs did not develop organically over time with many vague and many mysterious sources, but was conceived by a single man in 1871. Many sources credited William Playfair with the invention of bar graphs or bar charts. However, a Frenchman named Nicole Oresme used bar charts or bar graphs in the 14th century. So at first, there was a doubt if William Playfair was really the inventor of bar charts or bar graphs. Moving on to 20 years, and we finally got to William Playfair, who again uses bar charts or bar graphs for his publication, and it is the import and the export of Scotland. So that is an example. This is the first numerical data set which is being split into discrete groups and being plotted into bar graphs or bar charts. Hence, it is the reason why William Playfair was credited as the inventor of bar charts or bar graphs.
The history of bar graphs said that bar graph did not develop organically over time with many vague. Vague. What is vague? Vague is the uncertain sources, which means that there are many uncertain sources in bar graph. William Playfair, who again uses bar graph for his publications, which is the import and export. So what is import and export? Import and export is the revenue and debt. The history of bar graph said that this is the first numerical data. What is numerical data? Numerical data is a type of express in numbers rather than language, which means that it is used to express a data using only numbers. William Playfair split into discrete group. What is discrete? Discrete is the study of geometric properties, and that is the reason why William Playfair credited as the inventor of bar graph.
Today, I will be discussing the steps and processes on how to create a bar graph. So, I will be giving one example on how to create a bar graph. And at the last part of my discussion, I will summarize everything on how to create a bar graph. So, let's go! So, example number 1. The table below shows the number of students from various countries who attended an international school. Construct a bar graph to visually display this data. So I have given you now a table with numbers. So let's start the steps now. So step 1, find the range in values. What units are used? What is the greatest value? What is the least value? The units are numbers of students. The greatest value is 126, and the least value is 68. Now, let's proceed to step 2. So step 2, determine a scale. Using graph paper, start with 1 box, or equals to 1 unit. What is the length or height of the longest bar? Will it fit? If not, change the scale and try again. The scale must start at 0. So the horizontal scale will range from 0 to 150. Create a graph where everything will be fit, and also put some numbers. So that's all for step 2. So let us now proceed to step 3. So step 3, which is label the graph. So mark each rectangle along the scale. Label the marks by units they present. Then decide how wide each bar should be. How much space will you allow between each bar? Put labels so that we can know what particular scale we are looking for. In the graph above, each grid line going from left to right represents a multiple of 10. More grid lines can make it easier to be exact with the quantities being shown on the bar graph, but too many can make it confusing. As you can see in the graph, we already put some labels where you can see, and for that, let us continue to the next step. Step 4 will have 2 different kinds of sub-steps. So now let's start. Step 4A, draw the bars. Mark which each bar starts with and write the labels. Use your scale to determine the length of each bar. The formula for determining the length of each bar is as follows. Bar length in rectangles is equals to number of units of each bar represents, divided by units per rectangle. After you draw the bars for determining the length, now draw the bar for the graph. For step 4B, which is the second sub-step. Now the bars on your graph, check 2 bars with values that are close. Will their bars show a difference? Each small rectangle in the graph below represents 10 units. So to draw a horizontal bar that represents 68 students, divide 68 by 10. Your quotient is a bar length of 6.8 rectangles. Though the bar for Australia is 6.8 rectangles in length and represents 68 students. We are now at the final step, which is step 5. Step number 5, give the graph a title. So it is so easy. What is your graph about? As you can see in the picture, so the title is International Students by Country. So after we give our graph a title, so we are done. So before I end, guys, once again, I will tell you the summary on the steps on how to create a bar graph. The summary is there are 5 steps for constructing or creating a bar graph. These steps are listed below. So the first step or the procedure for constructing a bar graph. Step 1, find the range in values. Step 2, determine a scale. Step 3, label the graph. And step 4, draw the bars. And the last step, step 5, give the graph a title.
So moving on, here is the example of a bar graph. First example, this is a graph of the average temperature of different cities in the Philippines. In this graph, we mark 10 degrees in equal measure, and we have been given data for 5 cities, which are Cebu, Bohol, Davao, Manila, and Caloocan. And by looking at this graph, let's try to answer a few questions. First, which is the hottest cities among these 5 cities? The answer would be Caloocan. It's obvious as its average temperature is highest among the other cities. Second question is, if temperature is greater than 25 degrees Celsius is warm, list the warm cities. All the cities having their average temperature above the blue line will be included in the list. So the answer would be the temperature warm cities are Cebu, Manila, and Caloocan. The last question is difference in temperature between hottest and coldest cities. The temperature of the hottest city is approximately 48 degrees Celsius and the temperature of the cold city is around 11 degrees Celsius. So the answer would be 48 minus 11 is equals to 37 degrees Celsius.
Another example, so this graph shows the thousands of deaths within the year of 2019 and also the half year of 2020. The y-axis is the number of thousands of deaths, while x-axis is the month of recorded death. So the yellow bar represents the 2019 year and the violet bar represents the 2020 half year. So in the yellow bar in the peak, there is a colored light yellow. It represents the late recorded death, as well as the violet bar. It has a light violet in the peak. So it is also represent the late recorded death in that month. So this bar graph here is the data of number of death in the Philippines in every month in the year of 2019 and half year of 2020. So the highest recorded death is in the month of January in 2019, which is, it has a 57,700 death. And also the lowest recorded death is in the month of June in 2020 year, which is, it has a 31,700 recorded death. And the bar graph also shows that the highest late recorded death is in the month of March in the year of 2020.
Now that you have come this far, I probably would assume that you have learned what a bar graph is, its history, the steps and processes on how to solve it, such as gathering data or constructing a bar graph itself. Also, I hope you do understand the sample problems with solutions that we have presented just for you. Also, I would probably assume that we have achieved the objectives for this discussion. Generally, to sum it all up, a bar graph is a graphical representation of categorical data that has heights and lengths proportional to the values they represent.
Before we end our report, we want you guys to know that a bar graph has its application. So first, let me present to you the use of a bar graph. So what is the use of bar graph? So bar graphs are used to compare things between different groups or to track changes over time. However, when trying to measure changes over time, bar graphs are the best when the changes are larger. There are three uses of bar graph. So what are the three uses of bar graph? Bar graph summarizes the large set of data in simple visual form. It displays each category of data in the frequency distribution. It clarifies the trend of data better than the table. It helps in estimating the key values at a glance.
So, why bar graph is important? Bar graph is an effective way of comparing items in the different groups or comparing something or item in a different categories. So, in doing a bar graph or using a bar graph, you're going to use those rectangular bars. That's why it's called bar graphs, because you're using a rectangular bar. So there are y-axis and x-axis. So the x-axis stands for the category and the y-axis stands for the value of the categories. And bar graphs are also an effective visual for presentation and reports. So as we all know that most of us are using bar graphs in presentation because most of our reportings we have this comparing or comparison of anything or something. Bar graphs are popular because it allows the reader to recognize pattern or trends far more easily than looking at a table of numerical data.